You're listening to The Outcue, a 21 News journalist perspective on a top news story.
Greetings, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays. I'm Assistant News Director Justin Mitchell. Another year over, a new one just begun, and this is The Outcue. So we're off and running right out of the gate. 2025 was another busy news year, and 2026 promises to build on that. So we're going to get started this year with just a little bit of a look backwards, a little bit of a look ahead, some of the biggest things we've been following, and some of the biggest things that are likely to come in the new year, not counting, obviously, all of the things that we can't possibly anticipate now, and we'll look back a year from now and wonder where all the time went. So with me today to do that is 21 News at 5 anchor Lindsay McCoy and reporter Kaitlyn McCarthy. So, let's just jump right into it because there's a lot to talk about. Kaitlyn, I'm going to start with you. You have been on some of our biggest stories this year, everything from troubles with the Southern Park Mall, the Insight hospitals in Trumbull County. Just reflect on the year that's just passed, some of the big highs and lows, and what you took away from them.
I think a lot of those stories, because it was just a continuous checking back and making sure things are going the way they're supposed to with both Insight and the Southern Park Mall, it almost seemed tedious, but there's always something that came out of it. Like, for example, going into Insight when we were checking for the accreditation that was lost from CMS, like that was a step that we actually discovered that from looking at another story and trying to figure that out. But it's the continuous checking to see, oh, I wonder if Insight is having the same problem as another hospital we were looking at. Went and saw that that was the case. So I think a lot of the stories that we've done has been, well, at least the ones I've done that have been like these big ones, like the Southern Park Mall. It's been a lot of repetition, but every time it's moving forward in some way or backwards in the story. Like with Cohen Retail Investment Group, and we thought he paid his property taxes, and then everything bounced when it came to it. Yeah.
There's a couple there that like stories are coming to mind now as to how they came about. So you mentioned finding Insight CMS while looking at another hospital, and I had forgotten that was how we found that, but that was because Mercy Health was in danger of losing their CMS accreditation. That has since been fixed, but that stemmed from an incident where somebody had gotten a hold of a gun inside the hospital and shot themselves. Yeah. But that meant procedures weren't followed. And in the course of looking into that, you discovered that there's a site where you can look at accreditation being canceled, and you call me over and you go, hey, does this mean what it looks like it means? Because this is Insight. Yeah. Looks like they're going to lose their accreditation on October 10th. Yeah. And then, of course, the up and down with that, they did lose it. Then we had an announcement that they were reopening and had gotten it back. And then the discovery that never actually was even the case. And then they abruptly closed again. So they abruptly closed twice this year, right? And at this time last year, we had just heard their name for the first time.
Yeah, this was a new company. I mean, I know that they were hearing about some potential talks too with Sharon Regional as well when that was all going on, that they were kind of looking at that. But when it comes to actually Trumbull County and all that, they were still a new face in all of this. And we were trying to learn who they were. And something I'm really glad that we did is we kind of looked into the group and their past and then we also try to kind of talk to them too to make sure that, and I think we do this in a lot of our stories, we talk to them ahead of time to see what kind of promises they're making, and then we go and see if they're going to follow through with those promises or if they're going to kind of fall low on something. That way we can go to them and be like, hey, you said this is what you promised the people. What's going on here?
That's true. And you mentioned it's almost like tedious in that you start the day and you go, oh man, do we have another story on this topic? But then, if the alternative to that, of course, is this bump and run kind of news where you have a story one day, it's big, it's important to people, and then you just drop the ball and never follow up. These stories happen to be ones that kept feeding on themselves because more developments were happening, and you couldn't believe how much was either happening behind the scenes, or somebody wasn't being completely forthright about something, or somebody was believing promises that maybe were dubious. You mentioned the Southern Park Mall. nobody had talked to Mike Cohen. Nobody had done an interview with Mike Cohen. And then all of a sudden, Mike Cohen answers the phone for me one day.
After much push.
After a lot of pushing, yes.
Yes, I heard that on the other side of the newsroom. I thought, oh boy, you're really going to get him to do this.
First, he tells me that he's going to do an interview, but he can't do it yet. But he makes promises that he's paying his taxes. It's all getting taken care of.
Correct.
I write a story saying as much. I quote him in the headline. It's a beautiful mall, and he's going to devote the resources to it. Take him at his word. Then I call him to do the interview, and he doesn't answer, and he doesn't return calls all the next day that he had promised this interview, which puts us in the situation of we could ignore it, or we can try and hold him accountable. And if we try and hold him accountable, all we can do is report what went on behind the scenes. So we had to I wrote a story about how he was ghosting us after promising an interview. So then you come in on the 4th of July,
Yep.
and I say, listen, it looks like he's paid his taxes. Give him a call. He might want to talk about that. And he answers the phone, sets up an interview, shows up in the Zoom, gives the interview. It's an exclusive. He's up to date on his taxes. All that's great, right?
Yeah.
And it's a big win for us. And it looks great for the township that maybe he's coming along. And then by the end of the week, it turned out that those checks bounced and he never paid a dime.
Yeah.
And that's how that story kept going. Lindsay, for you, from your view as an anchor and an interviewer, so you're not necessarily out there in the field as much, which I know you miss sometimes.
Yeah, it's hard not to be involved. Like, can I go? Put me in, coach. But yeah, it's not enough hours in the day.
But you've got a little bit more of a bird's eye view where you can research these things and
Yes.
talk to people and delve deeper into these topics.
Yeah.
So what have been some of the biggest topics that you feel, and these don't even have to be local, I mean, just anything that we've talked about on the 5 in the past year?
Well, we did look deeper at the healthcare issue, and we have been able to speak with folks, even in Trumbull County, where we're seeing issues with some of the offerings of care. We've got a hospital now shut down in Trumbull County, and that's hard to compartmentalize. As we've talked in the newsroom about flu, cold season, viruses. What if, I hate to say, what if we have another pandemic? You don't have a crystal ball, but do you need those beds? Do you need all of that access, or is there enough care because of the market share right now and the population? These are conversations that are currently happening, I believe, and were happening before Insight closed. And so I think, I've talked to the mayor of Warren recently, most recently on 21 News at 5, and he gave, more insight as to the conversations he's talking to, who he's speaking with personally. And, these are the moments where you dig deeper, you get more information, and you find out some of the challenges healthcare is facing. That's something 101 West also has dove into deeply. And so whenever I hear any story going on, I'm thinking, okay, this is a big enough story. Can I take it and even go even further with it? And that's the goal of the 5 o'clock news. So I'm in a good position where I get to interview people and structure the questions, knowing that I want something new. I don't need a repeat of her story that has already aired.
Yes.
And I think the viewers, I think we've got really smart news consumers in this market, and the folks who tune in to us from outside the area. But if you're a smart news consumer, you're getting more, and we're asking the question maybe you're asking after you see her story. And so that's where I like to take it, because I can listen and find another way to ask another question if they don't answer. But we're trying to peel away that onion. Sometimes it's even ever evolving, so you will get new information, and that's what I like to do. And some of my favorite interviews, though, happen to be political because they're local issues and they're tied to the folks who represent the regions where these things are happening. And so during the 5 Minutes at 5 interviews, all during the election season, we do those with the candidates. You're able to hold these folks accountable, ask them what they would do and how concerned they are. I know in Boardman, for example, with the mall, are their hands tied? I mean, that's what they've told us lately, is that they don't know what else to do with this owner, because this is the game he plays all around the country.
Exactly.
So, I mean, that's where you're at, but you're hearing it from them. And if there's any movement, any progress, any other avenues that they're trying to solve a problem, that's where we talk more about it at 5. And so I think the viewers get a good variety. Yeah.
And plus, I think there's a symbiosis between those interview segments and the regular flow of the news, in that if somebody says something in those interviews, they can be held accountable to that later. If they've made good on it, great, we can follow up. If they failed to make good on it, we can say, you said here on the record, and we've done that. We've gone back and replayed interviews from the 5 and said, this is when this public official or whoever made this statement, and then gone back to see if it bore fruit. So there's a, there's a certain, it helps them get a message out there, but it also helps us keep them honest.
Yeah, and I try to make news. That's the goal when I set out on the 5, is that I want sound bites from my interviews to be in the next newscast. We're feeding the animal, which is the news, industry and the product, and it's 24/7 now. I think people want more information. They deserve it. So if we've got it, we're going to give it to you. And so, I think that's one of my most favorite parts about working in a local newsroom. Also, we do travel, though. I got to go to see the new Pittsburgh airport. I thought that was a really cool opportunity to take people inside and show them the construction, something that impacts the whole region, because they're going to speed up times to your gate. It's just travel in a new platform for people. So you're not, maybe seeing what you see in Cleveland, which definitely needs a makeover. And they've responded by saying we're having a expansion and remodel eventually here soon, and they've got the Browns. I think that's the thing, is that you're seeing these major stories also within our area pop up this year. And I thought that was really the flavor. We had so much local news, but then we also had so much regional news. And knowing that we've got an attorney that used to, be here in the Valley, Mark Dan, working to fight for the unclaimed funds for Ohioans. We've been on that interview subject a few times at 5, talking about, where do you get your money? Well, what's your lawsuit? Do you feel like you can even pull it off? Because it seems like they're going up against the Haslams and the Brown franchise, and the Browns want to move. And so that's been a really cool angle to dig into, and I think sports fans that are out there are always curious and get more behind the scenes thoughts on it.
Well, that's a good point too, is that the state news is local news.
Yeah,
it affects you. I mean, it affects outside of this viewing area, but it affects everybody in the state. And there are not a lot of great broadcast outlets for state news. There are state house reporters, certainly, but if you can read Cleveland.com or the Dispatch. I mean, there's state news that's covered, but if you're in a broadcast format, there's not a lot of places where local journalists who know what's important to this area can take that state issue and bring it to this thing that's happening at the State House. These are the local people or local organizations, and so we'll often do that also on the 5. Now, you mentioned political news. For both of you, this is a little bit of a look back and a little bit of a look ahead. One of the big local political stories was the, quite frankly, lopsided defeat of Youngstown Mayor Tito Brown by newcomer Derek McDowell. Did you guys see that one coming? And what do you assess to be the challenges McDowell's going to have to face coming in?
Well, I was actually there because they had Sydney that night following Tito Brown.
Right.
I went and I followed Derek McDowell. And I remember originally Tito Brown was actually a little bit ahead. And everyone that was at the party, like the kind of atmosphere there was changing. And I remember Derek McDowell kind of went up and he gave a speech. He's like, well, we put a good effort in. We're still not giving up. But like, obviously we have to sit here and face any kind of facts if they're given to us. And then right after he said that, it wasn't maybe like 10 minutes later, we started seeing that.
A pretty quick shift.
Oh, pretty quick shift. Yeah. And then he started taking over for Tito Brown. It actually did surprise me a little bit. I really wasn't sure which way, obviously, it was going to go because I wasn't sure if the people of Youngstown were going to be wanting, that shift, what they were looking for. So that really kind of showed what they were trying to, vote for in that situation. But I think looking forward, I think the biggest thing that I'm wondering about, and something I did ask McDowell about once, and I did not yet get a clear answer, but obviously he's still putting those plans together, if he's going to be kind of bouncing off some of Tito Brown's policies, or if he's going to be having his own way of doing things and how that would look different from what Tito Brown did. So right. I'm very excited to see, what exactly will entail there.
Yeah, and I don't know. I go back and forth on what I thought was going to happen, because this was a year where it's not a year with the big state races too, and sometimes that impacts candidates down ballot.
Right, because you've got a lower turnout.
Mm-hmm. And the last turnout for the mayor's race was not impressive. And I was concerned that if it is a small number, what does it tell us? But it was a larger turnout than the one prior. I believe
And
so.
or it was close. They were
Yeah.
close to equal.
Yeah.
But also, Tito Brown pulled the lowest vote total for any incumbent mayor this century. And
Yeah.
that was the thing that I thought was a surprise. Not that he lost, that could have happened, but he lost by more than I think anybody saw coming.
Yeah, I just think that the combination of the downtown construction, the relationship that's been strained between the mayor's office, City Hall, and the downtown businesses, and the fact that maybe the city, the residents, didn't feel as if he was meeting expectations, all of that was the perfect recipe for a failure. And I think if you really wanted that race to go your way, he needed to make a stronger case as to why he needed another chance. We saw ads, but specifics, we needed to see some more, I think, way in advance of just the campaign season. I think there were enough frustrations among folks that funneled way past the pandemic time.
Right.
There was a time when people were patient. The pandemic just happened. Okay, we get it. And then that was over, and it was still like this. And this has happened in other cities. And so a thriving downtown, seeing it, that does play a little bit into your approval rating as a mayor or someone representing a large region. And snow plowing too. All of the things. I mean, everyone's services. So you think of all the services in your city, power outages, just communicating with the people. Here are our issues. Here's how we solve them. People want it, they want it better. And when McDowell had mentioned in the debate that he wanted to change the way the city communicates to the public in an emergency situation like Realty Building and beyond, I think that might be one of the reasons that voters were ready for a change. They want to hear more. They're hungry for more information on how to make their community better. And they wanted someone else, another vision. They were ready for a change.
Yeah.
And this was a change election for
I definitely
city.
think the transparency was an
Yeah.
issue because in the second term, the Brown administration, I mean, working in news, it is just a fact that they got significantly less transparent. That's just true.
Yeah.
And you had all of that ARP funding.
Right.
And I'm not going to say whether I agree with how they spent it. That's not for me to say. That's for the voters to say. Maybe they're not thrilled, but put it online. Make it a transparent website where we did this here, but do it in more detail. Talk about it. Be out in the community promoting. We updated these parks, be there, have an event. I mean, this is campaigning 101, but also just, a way to strategize being in office.
And I think that's one of the biggest challenges McDowell's going to face is he's going to have to determine how much his vote total is made up of people who voted for Derek McDowell and how much it's made up of people who voted against Tito Brown. Because obviously there's a difference between a supporter and a we want change, and you've got to gauge where the people's heads are there as to how much change to bring. So far we've seen some cabinet picks. They've all been in some form or another from the current administration, but some promotions, some shuffling around. So it remains to be seen. That's something I'm watching for is he going to surround himself with people who are able to disagree with him so that they can hone policy. And, that's always the downfall of any politician if you've got your cabinets, sort of steamrolling you.
Yeah, and how does he handle the big issues right out of the gate? That's going to be critical to the way people see him in office and beyond. What's his relationship with the media? Is he able to talk to us? Is he able to give us details? Or is it going to be complicated? I've dealt with mayors both ways.
Yep.
I can tell you from experience as a reporter, I have been yelled at, I have been demonized, I have been degraded, but I still ask the question, how are you going to communicate? So far, he wants to handle things in a business manner, it seems. He wants to be business professional, take that into the office right behind you. I hope that continues because I think people are, like you said, they want information.
Exactly. So now 2026 is going to be a bigger political year. This is not an off year. This is the midterms.
Oh, yeah.
We've got a governor's race. We've got a major Senate race to watch out for. So, I mean, Lindsay, this is your bread and butter. What are you watching for in those races? We've got looks like Acton versus Ramaswamy. We've got Brown versus Houston. These are title
ready.
fights.
For folks who just want to understand, I see it as almost like sports. To me, it's just, I'm into it. And that's okay. I like the strategies. I want to see what the campaigns are doing to get their candidates out. I always find that the most fascinating. What are they focusing on? What's the messaging? Why did they choose the words they're using? All of that matters to me. And it's going to matter big time in some of these races. So I pulled some numbers for you, Justin, because you know I like to do research. So Real Clear polling average, they've got numbers out there. There's a few polls, but there is a new December one from Emerson College. So we're getting some new numbers, but you know we need more data. So this just take some of this with a grain of salt. But you know, when it comes to the governor's race, I sat down with Ohio Governor Mike DeWine at the end of the year last year. We talked about, you know, what are his big issues moving into the new year, and I said, well, are you going to endorse a successor? And he said, yeah, this race is really heating up already. Like, they know this is already a thing. You've got Vivek going to dinner in every single county for the Lincoln Day dinners. You've got Amy Acton doing campaign stops. They're already out there. Vivek Ramaswamy up by 1 point. So in this new poll, this race is pretty tight. Money needs to be spent. We know there's money being raised on both sides. Vivek has a lot. Amy Acton's raising a record number in terms of a Democratic candidate, though. So
and in a blood red state, so that's what are you?
How do you weigh that? I think this is going to be a campaign to watch. DeWine did say that Amy Acton, you know, doesn't bear all of the responsibility for the decisions that were made and maybe doesn't deserve all of the criticism during the pandemic because the buck stopped with him, he said. And so, you know, he was the boss. She didn't stay the whole time either. So I think, you know, voters kind of read into that as well. So that will be something that I think the voters are going to keep in mind. She's a Youngstown native as well. She may perform well in this region. I don't know. We have Vivek Ramaswamy. It's possible that he could do well, and he has a lot to spend. And this is a state that is, you know, swinging that direction. But we're at the midterms, so it's hard to say. But given the fact that we've got to watch the economy at least through the summer.
Sure.
I think once the summer vacations are over for folks, people are heading back to school. People are going to be tuned in, and they're going to have an opinion because prices are what they are. They've spent what they've spent all summer, and they got to get ready for back to school, and that's not cheap. I would know. As parents, it's hard.
It is.
It's a lot of things to get to. I'm confused by the variety. But then we've got the Sherrod Brown-John Husted race for U.S. Senate. More legislative records to chew on here. I think this is the one where governor's race, these are newcomers to politics. We'll see how it goes. What are they going to focus on? So far, we've heard property taxes and some other proposals, but what are they going to literally settle on? We'll see. But the Senate race, I think, is going to be different. Emerson College poll from December 11 has Husted ahead with 49% to Brown 46, but that undecided gap has closed in Brown's favor just since October. So. And the governor had said, DeWine said, I ran against Brown and lost. And I know how he campaigns. It'll be a tough campaign for John Husted. He's playing a low profile game right now. He's not doing a lot of media interviews. He doesn't do the talkbacks with me that the senators, they'll offer them almost every other week or so. So far, haven't gotten one. And he's been in office for how many weeks now or months? So this is intentional. And I'm just curious how long that's going to go on before it starts to hurt him. We'll see.
Because Brown will put himself out there for sure.
Yeah, he's already started.
He's already been on the
here.
5.
Yeah, and he's done an interview with me, and that was memorable too because I think I've ever seen him out in the field do an interview with me like that. It's always been those talkbacks.
Yes.
Or if I, run and follow him somewhere. But that's hard for us to logistically make happen sometimes. But that shows he wants back in, and he's going to pull out all the stops. So this is going to be a race to watch. And I know the House looking like it could flip in the new year. We'll see.
And the other thing about that Senate race, the governor's race, it's been a long time since there's been a Democratic governor in Ohio. It's been since Ted Strickland. So you're going back 16 years now.
Right.
So it's been a while. So Acton clearly has a steep uphill climb. But like you said, it's the midterms, and the party in power tends to take a bit of a beating in the midterms, so she's got some momentum. But with Brown versus Husted, Brown was always one that regardless of whether the Democrats were doing well, he was able to do well. So he did lose to Bernie Moreno, but he lost to Bernie Moreno in a particularly red year that went, you had Donald Trump on the ballot.
Right.
So now, none of that's the case. This is Brown versus Husted, and there are Brown voters out there. And so that one's really almost like a coin flip. That 3 points, forget it.
Yeah, they're going to have to work hard, especially in the suburbs, I think, as well. You're seeing some shifts, and I think the the numbers are moving around. I'm curious if anyone's going to do any more polling here in the near future, because I know that, you know, you're hearing, even with the national polls, folks saying, hey, we're not really thrilled right now. Like I said, there's a lot of time before the midterms. And one of the things I wanted to mention, because, you know, I had sat down with the governor, he does think that Houston has a strong opportunity to win. He said this is still a red state where he's got that chance, but this is going to be tight. And I'm curious what issues are going to come to the surface to haunt both candidates.
Right.
I think they both have issues that they're going to have to work around, and that's going to be fun to watch.
Yes.
But also the ads are going to be relentless. You're going to see commercial after commercial, and you're going to hear about everything. You're going to hear about healthcare, and I think that is going to be the issue that lives on, because it did so well during the shutdown for the Democrats. That issue is going to just carry through 2026. And locally, we're a test case for this because of our healthcare system locally, seeing so many shifts.
Well, that, and because we just historically we have a higher percentage of people on Medicare, Medicaid, which means that there's probably more people on ACA plans, and so that percentage figure, whatever it is nationally, we have a higher concentration of people affected by these things in this area. And it's definitely what you see. I see the Ohio Democratic Party send at least an email a day about Husted's record on healthcare. Don't see a lot going the other way yet. Brown is really kind of still just gearing up and doing, you know, face to face. Husted has not said much yet about the campaign, but yeah, I think you're right. Healthcare is definitely going to be central.
Yeah, and you know, this is where the money is spent. Northeast Ohio, the voters that are watching right now, you are it. Like, you are the one that they want to vote for. You, like, they want your vote, and so you've got to do your research on both candidates and make a decision. I think that they're going to spend big money here, and I think that you're going to see their faces a lot. And so get ready for the teeth to come out.
Absolutely. Northeast Ohio made the difference. I mean, it was Northeast Ohio. Right. It was Democratic counties staying home that made J.D. Vance a senator and a vice president, and not Tim Ryan. And it was Republican counties coming out that made Moreno a senator and not Sherrod Brown. I mean, they were all in Northeast Ohio. That made the difference for sure.
Yeah.
Outside of politics, and I'll start with you, Kaitlyn, and we'll wrap up unless there's other things I'm forgetting that you guys want to get in there. What are the big things left hanging that you'll be watching for developments in the year ahead? You know, I'm thinking, we talked about the mall, we talked about the hospitals. There's also controversy in the clerk's office. There's the Ursuline story that we haven't even mentioned yet today.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yeah, no, that was just to circle back real quick to the Southern Park Mall. A story that I did at the end of last year was talking about how, depending on, you know, with the taxes, if they don't pay it off for 2 years, those property taxes, they can foreclose on that property. Like that, they can take legal action.
So looking ahead a year from where we sit right now, that could be the situation we're in.
That's what I'm saying. The closer we're getting to that deadline, the more scary I think that's going to be. So I think that people are going to be more, you know, even more vocal about it, more concerned about that, because I know that there's a lot of people that have told me that the last thing they want is that building to sit there empty in the middle of Boardman. So
busy 224.
Yeah, it's so busy. I mean, to lose that mall would be such a big thing that brings in tax revenue all the time for Boardman Township, for the county. So I think that's going to be a big thing that I hope to continue following here.
Not to forget the ancillary businesses that benefit from the mall traffic.
And then there's also one that I've only done like a couple stories on it. I think that we've only had, we had the horses that were at the Pure Gold stables.
Yes.
And I keep continuing to look up on that. I want to see if there's any legal action, anything that moves forward on that. I haven't seen anything yet, but that is one thing that we've done that I actually have seen on my own social media page. When I'm scrolling through TikTok, there are posts of people posting about that particular story. So I can see that there's a huge wanting to see what exactly happens, and I still see stuff on it once in a while. So
Casey Musgraves posted about it. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, she did.
Oh, wow.
She posted about it. It was I can't repeat the things she said about them, but she called national attention to it.
Yeah, so I think that one there, I think if there was a lawsuit or anything that came out of that, I think that would be a huge thing that we would have to be following, breaking this year. So that's something I'm going to keep looking at.
Absolutely.
Yeah, busy year. I'm looking ahead to politics. of course. But, at the same time, I also am watching the AI data centers. I think this is the big story to watch. I think it's not going away. It's going to get bigger and bigger, and more people are going to become more vocal about it, depending on where they want to pop up. And I am curious how the Ohio House and Senate handle their legislation moving forward, because is that going to be enough? Because you and I were talking, I was saying, hey, I don't understand the messaging or what we're doing here, but House Bill 6, the nuclear bailout bill, they're replacing it with the legislation which has this new legislation and law containing regulations for AI within them. So they're trying to do all in one. I get it. They can pass other legislation too, but if this is what they're going to do, is it good enough? Mm-hmm. Everyone's watching with a really close eye, and I think that if there's room for error, that could hurt the Ohio Republican Party as well. They've got to get it right the first time, because these are big investments taking up large swaths of land across the state and other parts of our country. And if you think that the communities that are maybe more rural are not paying attention, you're wrong.
And every community leader that this comes before, which ultimately it's going to be almost all of them, they need so much information that's not even necessarily available, because there are big promises made with big figures, dollar figures, energy figures that may or may not be realistic, but you make the wrong call. And you could either be, let's say that these end up being a bust. You could be going all in on something that just destroys a bunch of land and leaves you with an eyesore. Yeah. But the other way, you could overregulate and end up boxing yourself out of the wave of the future. You need to find your way through the darkness right now to make the right call. I don't envy any of them on that one.
Yeah, and I'll be looking ahead to that administration behind you across the street to see how the year goes. It'll be a first year. I'm just excited to learn more. And I'm one of those people, I just want to hear it first. I absorb, I'm watching, and I'm learning, and then I go in and I say, okay, well, wait a minute. What's happening with this event? What about this issue? So, they've got time to start, and maybe they'll make some headway on some things that need improvement.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, that concludes episode 1 of the newest season of the Outcue. As always, you can reach us at news@wfmj.com, watchdog@wfmj.com. You can call our newsroom at 330-744-8821. You can send us a direct message on Facebook. You can send us a direct message on Blue Sky. You can write us a letter. We do get tips that way. And we're looking into one right now that might be a story by the time this airs. So anyway, you can reach us. We are here to serve you for yet another year. Happy New Year. This has been the Outcue.